Temperature of the country's political climate runs hot with protests and active violence breaking out across the country. WIFR News reporter Sydney Stoffregan talks with area lawmakers who say bully culture has no place in politics.
The shooting of the Minnesota lawmakers took place the same day as No Kings protests across the country. While most gatherings were peaceful, several cities saw violent altercations, including a shooting in Utah and vehicular assaults in Virginia.
We just continue to do our job.
Illinois Senator Dave Severson calls on fellow lawmakers to think before they speak. He says the once non-personal disagreements have warped into name-calling and retaliation. He points out comments made by Governor J.B. Pritzker, who called for mass protests, saying Republicans cannot know a moment of peace.
Leaders have to stop with their hate speech and their calls for physical action. And then law enforcement needs to do their job in keeping law and order.
Severson shares he isn't concerned for his safety.
The majority of people, overwhelming majority of people, even if they disagree with you, they understand that this is in a free society, people can have their different views.
But State Senator Steve Stottleman is worried about the scalding political temperature.
People need to be aware and need to be cognizant of that words can have consequences. And I think we have a better mentality along those lines. I think we can bring down the temperature and then we can avoid situations like this.
Stottleman pushes for cooperation and says the best legislation is passed when Democrats and Republicans work together.
You have too many politicians just blaming the other side, calling them names, and I think that goes to the heart of what we're dealing with. That political rhetoric helps contribute to the atmosphere we're dealing with right now.
Experts at the Pew Research Center explain that political polarization has roots that go back decades and that the parties are farther apart ideologically than in the past.
Thank you, Sydney. And President Trump Sunday night directed federal immigration officials to prioritize deportations for Democratic-run cities, a move that comes after the large No Kings protests that took place across the country. In a Truth Social post claiming, quote, "These radical left Democrats are sick of mine, hate our country, and actually want to destroy our inner cities."